The information provided on lifeinterruptedradio.com is for educational purposes only.
Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Show. I'm Sharon Saylor from SharonSaylor.com, and it's always an honor and a privilege to be with you here today on another brand new episode. I'm so excited, and I've got my wonderful cup of tea here, so I'll be slurping on that. It's that homemade chai tea I told you about with, this time I have coconut milk in it. I didn't make that. Yeah, I told you a lot of times I make my almond milk, but this time I've got coconut milk. It's really good. So what are you curled up with tonight as you listen to us on this great new episode? And I have an amazing guest tonight. Her name is Dorothy Martin-Neville. She's the founder of 4 companies and a licensed psychotherapist. She supports women executives through leadership coaching and helping them get out of their own way while recognizing and living their purpose, as well as creating a culture of purpose within their organizations. She is also a clinical instructor at the University of Connecticut Medical School, co-chair of advisory board of a multi-million-dollar Frontier Medical Grant, and recipient of the NIH grant funding for a quantitative and qualitative pilot study for the psychospiritual correlates of fibromyalgia. And she has spent years immersing herself in the work of merging allopathic and integrative health. Now, I could go on and on. You already know this is an amazing bio, right? I'll get more into her bio as we go in, but I just want to jump right in because I recently read her book, and I'm going to read the title here, Your Soul Sings, Your Body Dances. And I just loved it. It was so great. And welcome, Dorothy. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a delight to be here.
Now, I know you've written multiple books, but the one that really caught my eye, I've read several, but this one really caught my eye for wanting you to be on the show, is Your Soul Sings, Your Body Dances. And one of the things that I have found in my healing journey here is when I understood it was more than just my body needing to be healed, right. That's when the healing just exponentially happened. It was amazing to me. So let's talk a little bit about what was your first recognition of this concept of how it's the emotional, the spiritual, the mental, all of that is connected to the healing part of the body.
There are numerous points that kept pushing me a little bit further down the road. And the first was when I was 32, I had an emergency hysterectomy. And I knew I was a therapist, and I knew that there was something else going on that wasn't just physical. So I stepped back and looked at my life and looked at what was happening and why now? Why did this occur? And what was it all about for me? And as I could see so many stressors in my life and why it would happen this way, it just struck me like nobody's ever mentioned this. So it really struck me as something to watch and see later. And years later, I was getting a divorce and became ill again. And then noticed as a therapist, many of my clients got ill during the process of their divorce, some seriously ill and some not so, but they all became ill. And it really, to me, was like a blaring red light that there is a connection here between stress and illness. And so let's watch this. And that changed how I approached my therapy, as a therapist. And I then went and became certified in 9 different modalities of integrative healthcare, over a period of years. And continuously watching and observing those clients who presented with physical disorders and those who didn't. And I began to notice that certain personalities presented with the same disorder. And there wasn't a whole lot out there at that point in time. This was back in the mid-'80s, and there wasn't a lot out there about this. But I knew, I didn't understand it, but I knew there was a correlation between the personalities of certain people, the more powerful, aggressive, more really in-your-face personalities and the diseases they were creating, and those who played small, and they seemed to develop the same types of diseases. So I just kept researching in my own clientele and then studying more and more. And I created a method of energy medicine that really followed through. It was working. It was helping my patients heal, but it was also helping me do research. And this is what's going on. So I ended up creating a series of different healing modalities, healing techniques to work with different diseases. And it was working. And eventually, some people, I was blessed with a 6-month waiting list for a large number of years. And some of my waiting lists knew each other and said, let's get her to teach a class while we're waiting to work with her. And so I opened up a school so I could teach what I was discovering. And about 60% of my student body was physicians, nurses, occupational therapists, physical therapists, massage therapists, and so forth. And 40% were bankers and lawyers and carpenters and housewives and folks who either wanted to do their own healing or by then wanted to have their own healing practice. So I created a 4-year program looking at the psychological and spiritual causes of disease and disorders so that I could really support them healing their own patients as well as doing their own healing in the process.
Well, I'm so thrilled, and I have to say, I can't wait for the cultural shift to really take hold. I keep looking back at my healing experience in the early days. It was wandering around, and I didn't have a medical professional. I don't know if it was sort of out of fear, like they didn't, quote unquote, do therapy or whatever it was, but ever broach the subject of there's more to healing than just the physical body, the parts that, you know, we can put a Band-Aid on type of thing. And I really appreciate that you're a major movement in the cultural shift to bring this heart, soul, patient, practitioner all together into one community type of idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really important because when I finally discovered it through the Autoimmune Show, interviewing people after a while, I had this amazing insight in my own healing. As you said, looking into it. You mentioned that you had some like why questions when you first started looking into it. I found that sometimes the why questions kept me stuck. Like almost when I first started going in that path of maybe a why me, I found that I got stuck. It's almost as playing victim, I'll say. Do you have some tips on people so they can ask those questions and move forward, move out of that, get to that process of healing?
I think the why question is a normal, natural question. Why me, or why now, or why? Why? It's just this big why. What is this about? Why? That's natural. Ask the question. But if you become with tunnel vision that I'm only looking for that why, you miss the richness. Know that that's your question. Then step back and look at it from the 30,000-foot angle. You know, what's going on in your life? What is the stresses you're dealing with or not dealing with in your life? So let's step back from why me and let's look at it. That's there. Don't give up that question. But step back and look at what's going on in your life and look at what you are not dealing with or what you are dealing with, but from a position of weakness, of vulnerability. And then you can begin to see with self-love, without self-judgment or self-hatred or without self-blame. Because I think when we get into that track, we end up abusing, the victim here. So just step back and look at what is going on that I allowed this to happen, that this happened to me. And you can begin to see that you're starting on a journey that is an absolutely amazing journey of self-awareness, personal transformation. And you really begin to see that your health in many ways is in your hands, which is what my book is about. When your soul sings, when you follow your soul's longings, when you really live your passion, your power, your purpose, you're at a place where there's this real sense of who you are in the world, and your body is at peace. When you're at peace, it's very difficult for disease to exist. So even if you have a chronic disorder, you begin to notice that there are flare-ups when you're most stressed. If you learn how to deal with your stress, those flare-ups may go to a 1 or 2. They're not going to go to a 9 or 10 in the pain scale or the dysfunction scale. And you begin to see that you have the power to live a peace-filled life that's really soul-based.
I love that. As we're going through that process, I remember all of the moments I had of the 30,000-foot level. And what struck me interesting a couple of times was something would come up and I go, I thought I had already dealt with that. Mm-hmm. But it was almost like another layer of peeling of the onion back type of thing that happened.
Yeah. And I see that it really is like an onion. And as a therapist for 30 years, I can tell you that so frequently, my own process as well, because we're never done till we go home to the other side, but watching so many clients will come in and say, but I've already dealt with this. You did, but you dealt with this in terms of your work. Now you're dealing with it in terms of your relationship or with your children or whatever it may be. And it's just a deeper level. And you're going into this time, you're going in with far more self-awareness, far more self-understanding. And this time we can eliminate any blame and any guilt and any impatience and just lovingly walk deeper into your own personal journey. I consider it intimacy with yourself. You're becoming far more intimate with you and how you function. And
I like that, because one of the things that I was thinking about when you said that was one of my beautiful team members, when I was having a flare, I have to be honest, it was pretty intense, and I got kind of down, like, oh, I'm back, I'm just back all the way. And she pointed out, no, Sharon, when we got together, you were in this valley. You were way down here. And we're up the mountain here. And yeah, we slipped down a couple of steps on the mountain, but you're still way up here on the mountain. And part of that was noticing that I came in right away when I started to feel the flare happening, instead of at the original part of the disease process. I didn't know what was happening, and obviously waited a long time to begin the shift. But I think that's important for people to realize, that even if you have those moments of feeling like, oh, you're still much further along the path than you were when you started.
Right. And to me, that's where the self-forgiveness comes in, that when an old issue shows up again, you're thinking, oh God, I kidded myself. I thought I was done with it. And now we can go into the beating ourselves up and all of this stuff. And when you accept your humanity, and what your friend said to you was perfect, that you connect the experience of that disorder as way back there in step one, but you're not. And the fact is, because you're not, you noticed it quicker, you can resolve it quicker, and you move on. And because you're better and better at dealing with who you are and the way you deal or don't deal with stress. That level of self-awareness, that self-intimacy is an amazing gift you give yourself, because you explored it.
Let's talk about self-forgiveness. I'm sort of going circular here, everyone, but I'm just so fascinated with everything that Dorothy has to say, and her book is awesome. Your Soul Sings and Your Body Dances. It's a great book. You can get it online. And I want to circle back to when you mentioned self-forgiveness. A lot of people will use words like, yeah, but I should have known better. And other sorts of beating up. I guess it's not totally beating up, but in a way it is.
I should have been perfect. I should have been absolutely, totally in control. You will never be perfect, whatever that means. And you will never be totally in control. We're always going to be human. We're always going to have vulnerabilities. We're always going to be, at any given moment in time, an option to be vulnerable and fragile. And the fact is, that's not our truth. It's just a place we can go. And we need to have permission to know that we can go to those places and give ourselves permission to be human. And when you can do that, forgiveness doesn't need to come up, because there's no blame. It's, welcome back to my humanity. And we can see it, not even in terms of disorders or disease. We can see that, where we've done a lot of personal work, and you go to the grocery store and somebody in line annoys you, and out of nowhere you're thinking, I want to slap this soul on both sides of their head. And, you can be enraged at yourself because you should be so far above that. Or if something like that happens to me, I just laugh and say, you are so close to sainthood and just a few thousand miles away. It's going to be okay. And then laugh at my own craziness and just think there isn't a chance I would ever slap anybody I knew, much less anybody I don't know. And just laugh and say, okay, what's going on with you that you're in such a rush? That this annoyed you. And then laugh at this little girl who takes on this bravado, persona of, get going, doing it the right way. Well, of course, it's my way, which we may make it the right way. And so and then laugh at all of it. And when you can do that, you don't need forgiveness, because there is no blame. And without self-blame, you don't need self-forgiveness. And it's just accepting your humanity. None of us are perfect, and every one of us will perceive perfect differently. You know, when I think what the perfect me looks like is going to be different what you think your perfect self looks like. And so who's got the right perfect? Nobody. So let it go.
Right, let it go. And about letting go of other people's versions of perfect running through your head. I can think of a few times as I was going through the healing process when I would think of something and then I go, all of a sudden go, I don't even think that's my voice. I think that's so-and-so's voice.
Right. It usually is, because we learned self-criticism from somebody else. We learned we weren't good enough from somebody else. We learned we were stupid or dumb or whatever from somebody else. We learned we had no sophistication from somebody else. You know, we learned all of those messages we got from somebody else who felt that about themselves. And we ended up taking it on, whether it was parents or teachers or classmates, it doesn't matter. Where it came from, it's somebody else's voice. And I believe when you begin the inner experience of you, you can't help but fall in love with the woman or man you've chosen to become.
I love that. We're going to take a quick commercial break on that and just let that sit in, you know, falling in love with the person you've become. Skills that she shared with us about bringing it all together, understanding that we're not just a physical body in need of healing, that it's emotional, psycho, spiritual, mental, everything, all the games we play with ourselves upstairs as well. So I wanted to talk to Dorothy too. In her book, she talks about energetic techniques to facilitate this type of healing. Dorothy, can you share with us a couple of your top tips on understanding what is energy? I mean, a lot of times people hear that word and they go, oh, woo-woo.
Yeah, and they can if they want to. But the fact is, if they've ever had an MRI, if they've ever had a scan, a CAT scan, the physicians are watching the energetic patterns that are taking place in your body. And as they are watching it with your heart and your brain, this is how they perceive the heart and the brain through their testing, is what's happening energetically in the system, what is going on inside your body. The difference is with healers, they're trained to experience energy, not just in your head and in your heart. They're actually trained to sense, see, or feel energy in every ounce of your body, down to the DNA level, down to the cellular level, that we can energetically watch and see what's happening with cells throughout your body, depending on the level of training and the level of innate skill the healer has developed. Because every one of us is energetic. Think of those moments when you wake up in the morning, and some mornings you just feel, you just woke up and yet you feel like you could conquer the world. You bounce out of bed and you're filled with energy. And other mornings, sucking your thumb and getting further under the covers seems like a really good idea because it seems exhausting just to get out of bed. The variance is your energy. One, you're high energy, the other, you're low energy. And people use that term and they would understand that. And that's not just a word that's thrown out. That's the reality. When your energy is fluid, when it's flowing, when it's vibrant, you can bounce out of bed and jump right into your day. But if over the nighttime you were going through dreams, you were going through a process in which you were beating yourselves up, or you created a scenario that was horrific, you created a crisis in your own mind during sleep time, and now you wake up and you're buried under the burden of whatever that dream was, whatever that nightmare was for you. And even if you can't recall it, there's something that took place that you woke up in the energy of that vision. And if you want to shift that, literally, you're laying in bed exhausted and you want to shift that, lay on your back if you want, sit up in bed, whatever you choose to do. And then you do an energy healing. Then you literally just visualize. This isn't imagine, this is visualize. Energy coming up through the base of your feet, coming up to your ankles, and flowing in from Mother Earth, coming up from the ankles into your knees into your hips. Just visualize the energy of Mother Earth, because we're on this earth and we vibrate, to the pulsations of Mother Earth. Bring the energy up and visualize it coming up through your body and through the first chakra, through the abdomen, and then through the solar plexus, or the base of your rib cage, and then through your heart and your throat, and then up through your forehead and out the crown. And as you visualize that and you begin to feel energy flowing through you again, all of a sudden, you've stepped away from the focus, consciously or otherwise, on whatever took place over the nighttime. And you're now coming alive again with the earth energy flowing through you. And things can change amazingly just by doing this exercise. You know, each morning when I wake up, I lay in bed and I just look at, how am I feeling? Am I depressed? Am I happy? Am I feeling excitedly challenged by a new project I'm doing? Am I feeling overwhelmed? What's going on with me? Without judgment here, what's going on with me? And if it's something I want to take through my day with me, I get ready to jump out of bed. If it's something I don't want to take through my day with me, I'm aware that in the abdomen, which is the second chakras, if you know energy work, within the abdomen are all of the emotions we possess, and there's thousands of them. And if you can vision it like a lake, and that, let's say, sadness floated to the top, and that's my experience at the moment. All right, I think I'm going down deeper into the lake. I'm going to bring up joy, or I'm going to bring up passion and excitement. I'm going to bring up something to take me through my day. And literally, what we focus on is what we create. And if I focus on bringing up my joy and my passion, that's what I'm going to create. The energy in my body shifts and changes to match what I've chosen to do. And you get out of bed in a very different place. And this is a very simple understanding of energy, but it's it. But the reality is, everything in life is energy. Our body is completely energetic. And when something isn't working, your hand isn't working or an arm isn't working, because what's going on energetically there? What is happening? And I've spoken to people in my office who've said to me, it's like my arms feel detached from my body. And it's okay, so let's talk about what's going on with your arms. What is it? Because the arms are about giving and receiving. What's going on with you that you're like disassociating from the rest of the world here? What's happening with you? And we can walk through that. And then they can begin to, again, associate with giving and receiving. And it may be in a way that works for them versus what they think they're supposed to be doing. And it's all energetics.
I love that. And what happened for me is I know it wasn't a meditation as you guided the Mother Earth energy up through our feet and then through our legs and out through the crown. Yet in just that, I don't know how many seconds that was, I experienced it as you were walking us through it. It was so refreshing and invigorating.
Good.
What always amazes me is how fast the body will shift.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this, which is why we have those remissions that take place. With those spontaneous remissions that take place in some people, there is a huge energetic shift, letting go of a belief, letting go of a fear, whatever it may be. And amazingly, you feel fantastic all of a sudden. Or something happens in a split second, you feel defeated and exhausted. Because in one split second, something energetically happened to you based on your perception, and your body responded accordingly.
Now, we had Dr. Sandra Barrett on not too long ago talking about the secret life of cells, and I was just amazed twofold, and I know you talk a lot about the cellular makeup of disease, and the things that surprised me there that I'm hearing again through you, reconfirming it, is that she was talking about how fast the cells respond to any sort of change, whether it's a food we put into our system or a thought we put into the system. It was amazing to me, and just the quickness of how fast the body responded to what was going on. And the other thing that I found so profound about her interview, and I don't know why, but I always thought about things like healing the liver, healing the heart, healing the gut, whatever. But I never thought down to that level of, let's heal the cells.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about the cellular makeup of disease. I know this is a left-hand turn, everyone, but this part fascinated me because I was so fascinated by Dr. Sandra Barrett's interview too, that when I realized that Dr. Dorothy has some great insights on this too, I want to be able to make sure that we get this in here.
Cells are an amazing phenomenon. They are an absolutely amazing phenomenon. And I think what you and I had mentioned earlier another day, that when one of my students, my juniors and seniors, did medical internships, and one of them had asked a question. They were working with a woman who had breast cancer, and the breast cancer had metastasized to the brain. And she asked in class, what happens? Is there a different psychodynamic, a different makeup of the breast cancer once it metastasizes to the brain? And the fact is no. Every disease, every cell has its own biochemical makeup. And the chemical makeup of breast cancer is, and again, there's many different breast cancers, so let's just take one. They're in a family, but there's many different species within that little family. That when the breast cancer metastasizes to the brain, it has a very different makeup than a brain cancer would have, because every cell is different. And so there's different psychospiritual elements as to what happens when it metastasizes to the brain versus metastasizes to the liver. The brain is really about overthinking. It's about overanalyzing. And with the breast, it's about overanalyzing how many people are being let down because I'm sick in this bed. I need to get healthy. I need to get out of this bed. I have so many people I have to go and serve. And so all of those, again, has nothing to do with self-care. It has to do with the belief system about breast cancer, about serving everybody else. And so the cells search for life like we as whole-bodied people search for life. And I had a situation at one point. I was living in another country and got a call from a medical school and in the Midwest. They had just invested a fortune into this laser, and they were watching rapidly developing brain cells. And they wanted to watch these cells reproduce because they wanted to learn how they could counteract and work with patients who had this rapidly developing brain cancer style. And as soon as they turned the lasers on, all the cells would go to the outside of the Petri dish. They would go to the rim of the Petri dish, and the laser couldn't observe them. They couldn't do anything with this light, with any of this microscope, with anything. Nothing could be done. And they called me and said, what do we do? What do we do? And I said, they're terrified. This microscope, this laser, all of these equipments that you have here are terrifying these cells. What you need to do is bring healers in and have those healers. I don't care what the modality is. It could be healing touch. It could be Reiki. It could be the WISE method that I created. Anything. Have these healers come in and put their hands above and below the Petri dish and simply send in unconditional love. And while you send in unconditional love to the Petri dish, the cells themselves will relax. The cells themselves, because all of us desire to be loved. The cells will relax and they will go back and spread throughout the disc. And so what they did is the healers came in, they had 2 healers come in. And as I was on the phone with them, and these healers channeled this energy and the cells started going towards the middle. And as long as they stayed there, they could turn on the microscope, they could do everything they wanted to do, and now they could watch the cells. And their attempt was to watch them reproduce. And they could do this. And as soon as the healers left, the cells were filled with fear again at this invasive process and left and went to the sides of the Petri dish. We need to recognize that cells are life forms. And we have the ability, just as you right now you're impacting me, you're impacting every one of your listeners. Your energy impacts everybody constantly. Our energy impacts ourselves. And so when we go into that self-hatred, what cells are you hating? When we go into those negative thoughts of, I'm not worthy, I'm not smart enough, I'm not whatever your inner messages are, what are you impacting? What are you doing? And not for a second do I say this to fill somebody with fear, because welcome to humanity. But the difference is when I can say something like, oh my God, I can't believe I was so stupid, and I take a deep breath and let it pass, there's absolutely no impact. It's when I invest in that belief day after day after day that we begin to create an impact, a physical impact. So look at them self-messages, because your cells are listening, your body is listening to everything you say and everything you think. And when you don't have enough energy for self-love, call a friend who loves you and let her bring you back up. Let her point out to you. And I've done that. I've called them years ago. I remember calling a girlfriend and saying, I can't believe I really don't know anything about this field. And here I am, I've got the school, it's well established, everything's running. And I said, I really don't know what I'm talking about. I feel like a fraud. And she said, well, you are a fraud. I just want you to know that. You know that woman who came in to see you and was having surgery the next day for cancer, and she went in and the doctor said, the pre-op said, we can't find it. You must have been misdiagnosed. She said, that was a coincidence. And you know this other woman who walked in to see you using a walker, and she had chronic fatigue, and she was becoming more and more debilitated. And you spent 6 months with her, and she's now married with 2 children and works at the Y outside teaching sports. That was just a coincidence. Don't think about that either. And she went on with more and more of these situations. And I could say, hey, wait a minute. Yes, I know what I'm doing. And she said, okay, I got to go now. I'm in a rush. And she hands the phone. And that girlfriend had that ability to say, okay, you can stay in this unworthiness for the next 45 years if you want to. But I've got 5 minutes, so we're going to get you out of it quickly. And that willingness to begin to see these things really changes what's happening in your body. It truly is. Notice for people who have weight issues, when something happens in their life that's an absolute delight, they've been fighting this weight for 15, 20 years. Something happens in absolute delight. Within a year, you've seen them drop 40, 50 pounds because they don't need the protection anymore. And the weight seems to fall off easily. It's like, what was I doing wrong all those years? Nothing. You were trying, but there was a need to hold. And once you felt safe, whether it's in love or in a career you love, you don't need the protection and it falls away. That's not accidental.
That's wonderful. We need to take a quick commercial break. When I get with Dorothy, time just flies. You've been hearing just some amazing things about how it's all connected. I've been saying that for a while now through my own personal experience. But Dorothy, I want to circle back to something you said that I loved the way you said it because it really made an impact on me. It was about when we invest in that belief. Let's talk about how we can uninvest or positively invest in beliefs. When we realize, well, this one, I should, take my money out of the emotional bank account and maybe invest it in a different belief. I love the word invest in a belief. That just made it so real.
Oh, thank you. It's the fact is whether we believe positively or negatively about life, about the world, or about ourselves, we're getting something from that. And there's an investment in being a victim, or there's an investment in being poor, or an investment in struggle, because it's something we were familiar with growing up. And when we invest in those belief systems, we never get beyond them. So the first issue is looking at what beliefs am I invested in? Where am I in my life right now? Where is it that I want to be in my life right now? So let's look at what belief systems am I invested in? What is happening to me? And sometimes it's, I can't do anything. And if you're invested in I can't do anything, it doesn't matter if it is natural for you and you are 85% successful without an ounce of effort. You will find a way to sabotage that last 15% and end up back here because you can't see yourself as highly successful in that relationship, in that business, in that project, whatever it may be. So you bring yourself back and say, yep, I know it. This always happens to me. And it does. Because you will make it happen whether you're 10% along the success rate or 85% along, you'll make it happen. I've had patients come in and see me and say, I'm up for this huge raise. I can't believe I'm in the top 2 that are going to get this promotion and this raise, but I know I'm not going to get it. I never get anything I want. And amazingly, they don't get it. And saying, I know it. That's what happens. Well, when you walk in your office the next day with the sense of defeat and worthlessness, guess what your boss sees, even if he or she isn't conscious of energy? And who are they going to go with but the one who says, I can do this? And they don't even have to say the words verbally. There's just an energetic expression that says, I can do this. So we need to look at what we're invested in and why. And then look at why it holds us back or holds us in disease. I've had, sadly, I've just casually seen people out and they say, I've got this bad leg. and it's going to be with me the rest of my life. And I said, really? Why? Well, because it's been here forever. Well, why don't you change it? Oh, you can't change it. I said, well, I have people you could work with. I could refer you. No, it's okay. It's going to be here the rest of my life. All right. They have permission to do that.
I run into that a lot. Like, Sharon, you're always just talking about thriving and all of that, and I'm over here. And that's their experience. I understand that. And I also understand from other people I've talked to and my own experience that wherever you are, there's always things you can do to optimize. It may not be curing, and that's okay, but I'm optimizing.
Even if we don't cure, and I use these words as so different, curing and healing, even if we don't cure a disorder, we can take it from the 1 to 10 scale, from a pain or dysfunctional level of 9, and bring it down to 1 or 2. And maybe that 1 or 2 is what's going to support you to remember to do self-care for the rest of your life. So maybe this is serving you to remind you whenever you experience that it's time to do self-care. So
it's so funny you say that, because I keep a journal and I always leave the left page blank, as many listeners know, and I go back a while later and reread what was going on, and then I write what's happening now. And oftentimes I'll be just sailing along, and then I'll hit a rough patch, and I'll go back and read. I'm like, oh, that's when I was doing X, Y, and Z, and that's what got me optimized, and I felt so good I quit doing it.
Yeah.
That explains it. Thank you, Dorothy.
We're just amazing creatures, aren't we? We are just amazing creatures,
Well, it's funny because I find, and I hear from other people too, it's not just me, that the multitude of things I've done that have got me to the point that I'm at, optimizing, continuing to optimize, is I start to feel so much better that somehow I start to play games with myself. So I see what you mean about that 1 or 2, because I start to play games with myself. Oh, it's somebody's birthday. I can just cheat and have XYZ today. Or right. It's just one little bite or whatever. But then the next thing, it's easier to cheat the next time. And maybe cheat's not the right word, but it's easier to kind of dismiss those things that had gotten you to feeling from 9 to 2 or 1. It's fascinating, those games we play with ourselves.
Right. And when you're aware of them, because not everybody is, but when you're aware of them, you have permission to stop it. And without judgment, you have permission to say, oh, I don't know how that happened. I got back on that track again, back over here again. And rather than being delighted that you discovered you were going on that self-destructive path and you come back to the healthy one, people end up blaming themselves for having taken off over there anyway. Well, you took off over there because you're human. Just come on back over here again and applaud the level of growth you have achieved. Go back to your mountain. Applaud the level of growth you've already achieved. You're not back at square one. You noticed 3 days in that I've had chocolate every day and I've been nauseous every day. Now I realize, giving up the chocolate, coming back to feeling good again, rather than self-hatred. Hey, it is what it is. Let's come on back here and feel really good that you're smart enough that it was only 3 days in. You gave up the chocolate, you came back here, and now you feel better about yourself again. And enjoy the joy of the self-discovery rather than focusing on the self-hatred because you failed yet again. It's always choice. And that choice is what impacts ourselves. It impacts our health. It impacts our spiritual belief systems. It impacts our emotional beliefs. And obviously it impacts our health.
And I've just, in a circular way, one of the things that I'm hearing you talk about that I've always known as secondary gain. And that's what is staying somewhere, getting me besides feeling crummy. And often I sit down and ask myself that question and have to ask myself several times, because usually the first answer that pops into my head is rather superficial. And then I continue, okay, what else could I be gaining from feeling crummy today? Oh, I don't have to vacuum. Okay, that's rather superficial. What else could I be gaining from feeling crummy today? And I find that an interesting exercise to ask myself multiple times, what are all the gains from being where I am right now?
And they're there. And they're there. And I don't care if there's no physical disease or disorder involved in this. Emotionally, there is a gain to being in that limiting spot. And it's finding out. I mean, when I was doing my doctoral research on the psychospiritual causes or correlates of physical disease and disorders with fibromyalgia, I had to interview people to be, because I did quantitative and qualitative research. I had to interview people to be in the study. And there would be people that, the neurologist had referred to me, and some would say, but I don't know that I want to be in the study, because if you heal me of fibromyalgia, even though they're complaining about the pain and the limitations and they had to quit work and all of these things, if I no longer had fibromyalgia, I'd lose all my friends, because all my friends are in my fibromyalgia support groups. And I would say, well, what if you stayed in the support group and you could support them in understanding that it isn't a lifetime sentence, that it could be eliminated with some changes? No, it wouldn't be the same. I want to suffer with them. I want to be with them in this. And so I'd have to let them go, because they were ready to sabotage. I wanted to find out, is it possible or not possible? And if somebody's walking in saying, no, it's not, we're not objectively finding out whether or not energy medicine works as a tool for eliminating or minimizing fibromyalgia. And that investment was there. And I had another client come in, and she was at a point in her life where she quit work, and she was physically limited. And her husband, whenever he went out for a haircut, he took her, and she got a haircut too. When he went out grocery shopping, he took her to grocery shop so she could get out of the house and do something. And she came in and paid for 3 sessions. After the first one, about 80% of her pain was gone. And so she just got off my table and stood straight up, put her shoes on and her coat on. And I said, my God, you walked in here bent over in extreme pain with your walker. I said, look at the difference in you. And she said, yes, I saw it. And she had 2 more appointments scheduled. She paid for 3 in advance. And I said, oh, I'm so excited to see what you're able to do. And the next one, let's cellular memory is important. Now that you're feeling phenomenal, let's sit still for a moment and experience how your body feels at this moment. Because if we can create this cellular memory, because cellular memory is a reality, if we can create this cellular memory, you know what it feels like to feel so healthy. You could carry that with you until next week when I see you again. And she turned to me and she said, I won't be back. And I said, why would you not come back? You've already paid for 3 sessions. She said, my husband cheated on me, and I will never let him spend a second of his life without me by his side. And if I'm healthy, he's going to think he can go off by himself because I don't need him. I will never get better. My husband will never have a moment for the rest of his life without me by his side.
Wow.
I needed to let her go. I needed to let her make her choice. A therapist or a healer is, we're there to support your process. We're not there to govern your process. And I needed to let her be where she needed to be. And her husband was going to have her he's going to pay for that affair for the rest of his life, as would she.
Wow. That's pretty amazing what we can create even when our body follows along. And I want to ask you though about this idea of sometimes people then, I've heard them say, well, I created this, it's all my fault, whatever, the autoimmune, and they start to get in this spiral of, well, then didn't I just hear that if I just get my act together, this wouldn't have happened? And so how do people come to terms with this idea of it all works together, it all dances together?
It's letting go of, it's all my fault. Letting go of, it's everything I'm doing wrong. I don't deserve, if I'm that dumb or if I'm that bad or if I'm that whatever, I don't deserve to get healthy. Let's back up a moment. If you have a 3-year-old child who wants to make cookies and they know that pepper is going to be a great addition to the recipe, and you know it just may not be, but they know better than you, and many 3-year-olds know they know more than you know, and you let her put the pepper in, and then the cookie doesn't come out well. And she can be angry at you and herself because this was lousy and she's never going to be a good cook in her whole entire life. And you can lovingly say, sweetheart, I'm older. I know the pepper doesn't work. Why don't we put chocolate in instead, honey? Okay. And now you make a cookie and she loves it. Now she feels so smart and intelligent, and she made these all by herself. And you see this exquisite child who simply learned to listen and be supported. And then she's the one that did the cookies. She succeeded. And you can see that we're not going to blame her for thinking the pepper would work. This is in her innocence. She just remembers pepper made something feel better. Or she confused pepper with something else because it's all black in there. And you just think the poor child, she didn't know better. Now she was able and willing to learn. Now she knows how to do it better. When you see somebody who develops a disease or a disorder, and you think they had no clue. They had no clue that this emotional belief was going to impact this, which was going to impact this. And how can you judge and blame somebody for doing something they knew nothing about? So why don't we just go back and say, this happened. You had no clue. How would you know if nobody ever taught you? How would you know if you never had an opportunity to see an alternative approach? Why not have some compassion and understanding for this young mind, this young child, if you will, in terms of innocence and illness and disease, that this young mind didn't have the exposure, didn't have the experience to know that this leads to this. And now that he or she has put themselves into a position where they're exposed to an alternative, now they're in a place where they can start to do things differently because somebody is helping them see a better way of doing it. To me, it's just terrific. I know when Bernie Siegel started his work, people were blaming him for blaming the victim, and that was never, ever his intent. It was just helping people understand in his exceptional cancer patient program that there are correlations. And yet people really went after his first book completely because he was blaming the victim when that was never the case. And it really is about enlightening the sufferer of whatever the disorder or disease is, to show them, let me teach you how it happens. Let me teach you what it's about so I can support you making different choices. It's not your fault when you do something you know nothing about. It's not your fault when you do something because you don't understand. Its responsibility becomes yours, but not fault. So let's transform that.
I like the distinction between responsibility and fault. Thank you. Thank you. We are just about out of time, Dorothy. Whenever you and I chat, time flies. We're down to the last 3 minutes, I'm afraid. But tell everyone about your books and how to get a hold of you.
Oh, I'd love to. My email is Dorothy@askdrdorothy.com. That's Dorothy at AskDRDorothy.com. Or my website is AskDrDorothy.com as well. I would love to support anybody who would like to reach out and in some way. This work feeds my soul. This is the work that supports my health. It's helping others begin to see how unlimited we all are in our ability to be at peace in our bodies, peace in our souls. And when you follow your soul's longings, truly you have your physical health and your body can dance. It can't dance when it's filled with dis-ease, but when it is at ease and at peace, we're capable of so many things we never imagined, whether that's in terms of business, in terms of relationships, in terms of anything. I truly believe we are only as limited as our belief systems.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dorothy. That's fantastic. And your books are available online at all the major bookstores, as well as AskDrDorothy.com. You can find her books there too. And the one that we were discussing today is Your Soul Sings, Your Body Dances. And she has, how many books do you have right now?
7. I just released my 7th book last Friday, actually. Yeah.
Oh, bravo, bravo. So everyone, that's Dr. Dorothy Martin-Neville, and you can check her out online at AskDrDorothy.com. Have a great weekend, whatever your adventures. Join me next week for another brand new exciting episode. And as always, enjoy.
The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, including the websites understandingautoimmune.com and lifeinterruptedradio.com, plus social media, is for educational purposes only. What you read, hear, and see on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, and its websites, and other media outlets is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any of the recommendations you see, hear, or read here on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio. You've been listening to Life Interrupted Radio. To learn more, listen to other shows, and gain free resources that can help empower your life, be sure to stop by lifeinterruptedradio.com.